Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Education Unlocked. I'm so excited to have with us Dr. Gordon Amerson. Hey, Gordon, so good to have you on the podcast. I would love if you can start with an introduction for our listeners today. And we are so excited to start off the new year with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on the show. My name is Gordon Amerson. I have the opportunity, the privilege of being the superintendent of schools for the Val Verde Unified School District here in sunny Southern California. And I think just a little bit about me that might help your viewers, your listeners. This is my 25th year in public education. I've worked in multiple districts. I've been superintendent in two different districts, very different districts. One large district, which where I am now, and then a very small district as well. And those experiences in different districts gives me a well-rounded perspective about education, about leading in a small system, leading in a large system. All of it is still focused on, which is my leadership style. It's all focused on relationships. It's all focused on taking really good care of people. And my leadership style is really driven from my relationship with my mother. My mother is biggest role model in my life and has kind of taught me how to treat people. And then also my father and his development of my work ethic. And so getting my work ethic from my dad, getting my relationship and my personality from my mom has served me really well. And I'm very fortunate to do the things that I do. Love the work, love being in education, love taking care of kids, love building communities, and have fun doing that every single day.
I love that. And I want to say, you've served so many different roles from teacher to principal to HR leader and now superintendent. So, what shaped that belief that should be more human centered and more wellness driven too? Because I know that's something we talked a little bit about when I first met you. So,
Yeah.
I'd love for our listeners to learn a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, I really think two things. Number one, the concept of being committed to the work and coming to something every single day. It's really about like your why. It's really about who you are, the values that you bring. I've always been about people, and education has allowed me to kind of serve that mission of serving others, being there for people, helping to build a better, brighter kind of future, better society, better communities, and all around the express purpose of like taking care of yourself and taking care of your mental health and your wellness. I want people to feel levels of vitality when they come to work. I don't want, like, I have been fortunate to do this. This is now going on year 25, going into year 26. I've never felt that I've necessarily, quote unquote, worked a day in my life. I've had the privilege of serving for the last 25 to 26 years, serving in and around schools, serving with people, serving for and with kids and families. And so the vitality of that, because I know my purpose and I know my why, is really what drives me. Yes, there are challenging days. Yes, there are hard days. Yes, there are big rocks that we have to deal with. But wellness, thinking about the bigger picture of the value and the work that we do is really critically important. And so I use that as the lens. That's the mindset. It's always going to be a positive mindset. It's always going to be centered in growth mindset. Carol Dweck's work is foundational for me as well. So I think about those things as I think about how we go about the work and how we lead people every day.
That's really cool to hear. And I know that you talked a lot about, district level leadership. You talked about how you're also, addressing leadership burnout and you're working with a lot of other leaders as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and, how you started that and what that looks like for you just in general?
Yeah. So when you think about, well, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I had a chance to sit through a training, and we have tons and tons of trainings that we go through. And the gentleman who was facilitating this training asked a simple question. He asked everybody who was in the room, and all of us at the time were all principals. And so he said, raise your hand if you work. If you frequently work 12 hours a day. So everybody's hand kind of went up. Raise your hand if you customarily work 14 hours a day. A bunch of hands went up. He said, raise your hand if you feel like you customarily work 16 hours a day. And all the hands kept going up, right?
Oh my
All the
God.
hands kept going up. And he said, do you feel that even though you're working 12, 14, or 16 hours, that even though you're working in many cases twice as much as other people, are you getting twice the results? And the room was silent because no, obviously just because you were working longer didn't mean you were getting twice the results. And in reality, what we are asking people to do more and more and more is to work longer and longer and longer hours, but we're not getting the results that we're actually looking for. And so leadership burnout is a real thing. And in some cases, people think just because you are present or physically in this space, quote unquote, working, that you're getting more and more done. Here's how I want to address it. I want us to think about the dynamic of leadership is not always about the physical presence sitting within an office at any given time. It is like, how are you structuring and creating opportunities for people to grow, for people to execute, for people to be led, for people to be supported? And that can be done remotely, that can be done virtually, that could be done in person. There's all these different ways, but I'm trying to get people to start to think about other ways to leverage technology, other ways to leverage the world that is evolving around us
Yes.
to be more productive and potentially do it in less hours, thereby creating more vitality, more longevity. So you don't have to work 16 hours a day. What if you can do the same thing and get the same results working 10 hours a day and eventually maybe maybe back to 8 hours a day and maybe eventually less than 8 hours a day? And that might be too big and pie in the sky for most folks. But I think that AI, I think AI technology, I think blockchain technology, I think all the disruptive, innovative things that are out there and on the horizon that are becoming very, very, very real will create a space where we can potentially explore these possibilities. And I'm excited about being in the space and being able to explore those types of things.
I love that. And were there any specific like leadership challenges that like most shaped your career? Like when you maybe went through so many different roles, you kind of played many different leadership roles, you've mentored and you coached so many people. Have there been any that, you just kind of looking back say, wow, this one really shaped my trajectory or my experience as a leader too?
Absolutely. So I tell the story this way. Self proclaimed, though I'm sure a number of people would actually reinforce it. I felt I was probably the single worst first year principal on the planet Earth. Like I was awful, like awful, awful. Because I was playing a character. I was playing a role. I wasn't actually being the authentic version of myself that I came to know and understand over time with more experience. And so the single most formative leadership experience I've ever had was being a comprehensive high school principal and actually leading a very large, very, very, very multi-layered, multi-dimensional high school in San Bernardino, California. And so much that, I created later in my career, I've created a consulting firm, and the consulting firm is actually named the Principled, like Principled, like principal and education leader. And it's a play on words because the principalship was so important. Education is at the crux of everything related to leadership. So the principal leader came from that. And it is really shaped by my experience as a high school principal. And I share that as an example because at the end of that first year, I had some really, really important people that I still talk to today and are mentors to me today to say, we got to do something different. Like, we need you to be the leader who we know you are and can be. So, can you go do some soul searching? And so, over that summer, I went and did some soul searching. And the very first thing I did coming back, day one of year two, when we had our all staff meeting, was to apologize and say to that entire faculty and that entire staff, that I apologize for last year because I was not myself. I was not the leader who you all know me to be, and I will do better and I will be better. And here's how we're going to do this and do it together. And then year two, year three, year four, and year five were amazing opportunities for that school to grow. We built programs, we won awards, we did amazing work together. And it really took me humbling myself and being a much more responsible and a much more, I would say, courageous, while also humble, while also maturing leader is what created the opportunity for that.
That's amazing. And I took a look also. I know we last time. I know you have YouTube videos as well. I think you mentioned that. And I know after this, I do want to link that for our listeners because I think it's something really valuable for them to listen to. And you're a great speaker, giving really great perspective on really a lot of the areas that you've been to. So that's amazing. I just want to start by saying that. And now I kind of want to transition that into how do you even define success as a superintendent, right? Because a lot of our listeners actually like, since we have a lot of superintendents that actually come on here, I have a lot of superintendents who are actually listeners. And I think some questions that I always get are, how do you define success? Like, what does that look like to you, right? Because I know you focus on more of this holistic approach. Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like for you too.
Yeah. So how do I define success? I'm going to put it in, there's two different buckets, at least for me and in my journey. Bucket one is what does organizational success look like? And that is truly driven by the close collaborative conversation and relationship that I have with my board of education. So my 5-member board, who are really, really smart, strategic, members of this community who are elected by this community to provide the guidance and the direction. And they've been really, really clear on what they would love to see this district do and what they would love to see this district become. And so part of that success is getting really clear on what the board wants, needs, and is hoping for, and then building systems and structures that will help to effectuate what it is that they are articulating they want. And so we got really clear about what are our board goals, how will those goals be achieved, what are the underlying infrastructure pieces that need to be put in place. And then once we have that clear direction from the board, then it's all about how do we create the coherence, how do we create the alignment, and then how do we create the acceleration for those things to happen? Growing ELA scores, growing math proficiency scores, reducing issues of chronic absenteeism, creating the mental health and social emotional supports that all of our students and staff need to be able to be a healthy, collaborative, transparent organization. So I define that by our ability to clarify, articulate, and be able to execute on what the board goals are. So that's the organizational side of success. And then there's a personal side of success. There are things that I deeply am passionate around building, developing, coaching relationships. Everything I approach, my leadership style is really a three-legged stool. It is bucket one is the coaching perspective. I approach all of my leadership dynamics with all of my team, all of my staff through a coaching lens. How do I help them grow? How do I help them become better? How do I stretch them? How do I help them identify where it is that their talents really truly lie? And then how do we help them execute on it? The second pillar of that is what does it look like to build and develop organizational trust? How do we create a language? How do we create a shared vision around how do we create trusting relationships and trusting organizations that can then go out and replicate those things in the community to make more trusting schools and in more trusting cities and communities? And then the third stool of that is once we've taking that coaching frame and once we've built that organizational trust, the third part of it is we're going to harness in your talents and your strengths and your skills. We're going to be a strengths-based organization. We're going to try to put you where you naturally do things well. We're going to put you in the places that you're most passionate and you're most invigorated about doing the work. And we're going to try to identify those things and let you lean into those things as well. So success for me is being able to go through and develop those structures and systems. And I've worked to create those structures and systems in every place that I've been. But if I can put those pieces in place, that is what I would define as success, getting those pieces in place and having them become a part of the fabric of that system or that organization.
That's amazing to hear. And I know that, like, the key areas you've really talked about, I like how you broke it up into different buckets. And going back now to one of the parts you spoke about with wellness and not overworking, but being smart about how we can not overwork, but use other resources. So I want to transition that into how you are thinking about using AI, not just in education, but more so for your staff and your professional development and your team to help them avoid things like burnout. So talk to me a little bit about that.
This is a journey
Yeah.
because we're still in this infancy of what AI is going to be, what it is going not what it's going to be. It's going to be what it's going to be. We're still in the infancy of understanding what it's going to mean for us in education. And the reason I say it that way is because right now we're still trying to grapple with is AI going to replace me? We're still grappling with is AI going to give students the ability to cheat? We're still grappling with some of these, I will call them really important questions to answer and really important questions to tackle. But I also have some historical benchmarks that I would have us think about so that way we don't get bogged down in just that. And here's what I mean. Example number one is I'm old enough to remember when I could not have a calculator in math class. I'm old enough to remember, like, if you had a calculator, you were cheating.
Oh my God.
And now, if you're going to be in any high school level math, it is a requirement that you have a calculator in your math class. So it was cheating until it wasn't. I'm also old enough to remember the days of the beginning of the internet, and we're like, "Oh no, that internet, that is a big box. That's going to be the worst thing ever, and I'm never going to touch that. That thing is going to have all of the bad, all the bad juju, all that stuff." And now it doesn't matter where you go, there's an expectation that you can get on the internet no matter where you are, no matter what time of day, no matter what location, no matter what circumstance. The internet became ubiquitous. I believe that we're at the beginning phase of that same exponential adoption in the AI world as well. Because so many people think that, oh, like AI, I don't do that, I don't do that. And so I asked them, I was like, do you watch Netflix? Well,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, and Netflix is using AI to determine and tell you what to watch next. Do you use Amazon? Well, yeah, of course I use Amazon. AI is using, and actually AI is even more embedded in Amazon nowadays. And it's like, hey, well, do you use Waze or do you use Google Maps? That's all AI. It's like people don't realize that it's being used around them. So I give that context to simply say, what we truly do need to understand is that we need to let people go through the evolutionary process of understanding, making meaning of, and then embracing and then engaging with AI. I am an early adopter by nature. My design, my hardwiring is I'm on the extreme left of any bell curve distribution of stuff. So I am a champion slash early adopter. This new thing comes out, I want to do it. I'm trying it out. I will tell you, I can go back in my history of on ChatGPT. I was using it in November of 2022 when it got released. I was already messing with it and playing around with it, and essentially have used AI every single day since. I've gotten smart about what it means for me as a superintendent. I've gotten smart for what I think it could do for our organization, for our people. And so, what we're now working to do is help people to understand where we are, and we're trying to help to build some guardrails, build some structures and systems. We're trying to create guardrails and task force who can really explore these things, but we're also implementing, and we're implementing and we're innovating as we go. So we've put things in place that are using AI as a backdrop to do visitor management, to do people who are attending an event. Our classroom walkthrough process has AI components to it. We're creating documents, we're creating workflows that all have AI kind of embedded at it as a way that is in many ways, with the exception of the classroom walkthrough tool, and there's obviously some conversations that we've had to have with folks about that and what it means to use AI for walkthroughs. But the reality is we're trying to keep it away from the direct instruction in the classroom.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is then show all these other ways that AI could be used to make you more productive, make you more efficient, and to streamline your day. Because if we can streamline your day, and then I can let you do the things that you're most passionate about, which is teaching science, and you're not worried about grading papers or writing lessons or drafting emails. If we could digitize and we could automate that, and then you could go deeply and spend 6 hours just geeking out on of doing science. I'd rather you geek out for 6 hours figuring out how you want to teach science as opposed to 6 hours grading pieces of paper. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about and how we're actually incorporating these things specifically in our district. And then I'm also thinking about how do I help other people out in the landscape in the educational community around the very same things about digitization, automation, innovation.
That's amazing. And I know that one of the really exciting things too is, even beyond, and I want to go backwards a little bit, right? Starting with what got you into education. And I like to always think about this question. Was there maybe like a mentor? Do you always know you wanted to go into education? Did you have someone who like stood out to you early on that was like, you are going to be a principal one or a superintendent one day or a teacher one day? Like, who is that? Like, was there a person or was it like just your choice?
Huh.
You're like, yeah, I want to go into education. Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces to this. First, my best friend's mother was the HR analyst for San Bernardino City Unified, which was my very first district where I became a teacher. And at the age of 12, she began telling me and my best friend that we were going to become teachers. And we're like, no, we're going to become teachers. We're going to be CEOs and we're going to be this and we're going to go out and make all this money and all this kind of good stuff. And we both became teachers. But so she was instrumental kind of at that very, very early phase. But education was not my first career. Education is actually my second career. My very first career is I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And so
Okay.
right out of high school, I actually signed a professional baseball contract and I played baseball with the San Diego Padres and then with the New York Yankees for 5 years.
Wait, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I did not know
that
that.
was my first job.
Okay. Yes.
And then I got hurt,
Oh,
broke my hand, and I could no longer continue to play at that level. And so then the second mentor, so even though she's really the first mentor, but the second mentor in the story was my mom. So when I broke my hand and I made the decision that I couldn't continue to play, I called my mom, and then my mom reminded me something that, she didn't remind me, she finally told me. She said, "Are you sure you're done playing?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm done playing." She says, "Okay, write down this phone number." And so I wrote down the number, and the number was to New York City, it was to the Major League Players Association office. She said, "Call them, tell them where you're going to school. They'll start sending the checks for you to pay for you to go to college," which I didn't know about at that point. And then I was like, my mom had the presence of mind to negotiate as a part of my contract when I was 17 years old. Yes, he can go and play baseball. He can go live his childhood dream and all that kind of good stuff, but he's got to have a fallback plan. And then I was able to execute the fallback plan. And I became a teacher. And once I became a teacher, then the rest of it all kind of dominoed. And yes, there were a bunch of people who were like, you're going to be a great assistant principal. Oh, you're going to be a great principal. Oh, you're going to be. And then I definitely stood on the shoulders of other people kind of throughout this process.
I honestly, you can never tell certain things from LinkedIn. And that was one of the things I did not know. So really exciting to hear. And also really cool journey like within that space because you started off. And I think now I understand a little bit more about why wellness is also so important to you because it was probably something since you were really young, you were so
Ex-
integrated in sports and
Exactly.
movement and all with that. Okay, that's awesome to hear. And can you talk to me now a little bit about like just even like advice that you would give to emerging education leaders? Like how did you move from teacher to principal to superintendent? Like what was that journey like? Was there a trajectory that like you can kind of share advice on that really impacted you as you were kind of going through that leadership trajectory too?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I was fortunate to have was to identify mentors and some of my early mentors. My very first high school principal who hired me, she's the one who one day I'm walking by her office and she called me in and she said, you're going to make a really good assistant principal. And I hadn't even thought about being an assistant principal. I was quite happy teaching science, coaching football, coaching baseball. She spoke something into existence that I hadn't even been thinking about. But that little nudge was then what led me to then start doing some research and figure out, well, what do you have to do to become an assistant principal? So it kind of was that nudge. The advice I would give anybody and everybody about aspirationally looking to grow and build to higher levels of leadership, make yourself as valuable as possible to the organization. One of the things I had the opportunity to do is when given the opportunity to do extra work, extra duty, coach extra things, be on extra projects, be a part of different task force and work groups and plant yourself in there. The learning, the growing, the exposure, the opportunities, the conversations, those are the things that are going to be critically important because as you get that exposure, it helped me be a better instructor in the classroom. It helped me be a better teammate within the science department. It helped me be a better colleague on the campus around the campus culture, the campus direction. All those different things came as being a part of saying, I want to be as valuable to the organization as possible. And so I'm going to immerse myself in things. I'm going to be a part of it. I'm going to become a part of the fabric of this community and of this organization. So I think that's number one. And I think the second thing is to continue to grow your skills and your knowledge. Get trainings, get exposure, plant yourself in professional development opportunities. If somebody says you would benefit from going to this conference, you'd benefit from being a part of this group, be a part of those things because the more opportunities you have to learn and grow and hear things from varied perspectives, it's going to give you that much more robust of a perspective to then be able to again add value in more places and more places and more places. And this is I'm glad you asked this question because this is definitely something that I delve into on my YouTube channel and on the different things that I post on social media. It's all about adding value.
I love that. And I think I also want to think a little bit about, what you also did touch upon this a little bit, but what gives you hope for the future of education, right? I know you talked about different areas, but I'd love to get your take and your perspective on that too.
Education is the backbone of a democratic, progressively advancing community, country, society. We have to have education and we have to have public education. It is what is foundational for us. And so my hope and my aspiration is that we continue to show the value of public education to our parents, to our families, to our community members, to our government, to the world, because the United States is a place where greatness happens. I walk into classrooms, and I think this is again my cup half full, my coaching frame, my positive mindset, my growth mindset. I walk into classrooms thinking that I'm looking at the next CEO of an organization,
Yeah.
the next surgeon, the next governor, the next president. I want to will that or manifest that into existence. And I look at our kids, our beautiful Black and brown and diverse children in this district. And I'm like, they are going to be something. And I have the solemn responsibility for helping to create that for them. And so that's my future of education. That's how I look at it. And that's what drives me to make sure that we're taking really good care of our kids.
And the last thing I want to leave with also is can you talk to me about maybe one thing that you would go back, let's just say you're in a time machine, go tell your younger self? I know you mentioned you have a 17-year-old, you have a daughter as well. Maybe it's to them. Maybe if you want to go back and give them, now some advice that, like, hey, looking back, this is something that I wish I told my younger self. I had one of your friends on here, Dr. Ryan Smith. His was take more pictures. I mean, I'm curious to see, what would be your, like, if you had to go back and tell yourself something, what would it be?
And I'm going back and telling my first year teacher self,
It could be your younger self when you were
younger
playing
self.
baseball, like in high school, like transitioning to that, or it could be,
Yeah.
college, or really
Yeah,
anything.
I have a couple funny ones, but then I'll have a serious one. First and foremost, I would tell my younger self that the first time that somebody said the word Google to me, buy the stock. I would have said that because I literally had somebody tell me when I was an undergrad,
Oh my
hey,
god.
and I was like, oh, we got to do some research, and the person, my colleague that I was working with, she said, well, just Google it, and I was like, Google, what is that? That sounds made up, and because it was at the moment,
Yeah.
I would buy Google. The second thing I would say is, I would have bought Bitcoin in 2009. Okay, now those are the 2 funny ones I would say. What would I really tell my younger self?
Yeah.
I would say that we need to enjoy the people who we have the opportunity to spend quality time with in your professional space, in your personal space, in your social space. Human connection is so critically important. And the reason I would tell my younger self that, and the reason I'm telling my children that now, is because we are ever advancing into this space where it is not lost on me that I walk into a restaurant and the vast majority of everybody that I see are looking, they're like this, even though there's somebody sitting directly in front of them.
Exactly.
And the human connection is so critically important. Value the people who are in front of you. Value the time that you get to spend with people because it is finite, and you just never know. And so, yeah, I would agree with Dr. Smith. Yeah, take more pictures, definitely, but value the personal connection that you have and the people who come across your space and come across your path. Just value the opportunities to have been in space with them.
I love that. And I want to just thank you so much for being amazing, for sharing some awesome advice. It's an honor to have you on this podcast. That's my first thing that I do want to say. And I really also appreciate you taking the time and, really sharing some really great advice to all our listeners out here. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with as we end the podcast?
I just appreciate the opportunity. Anytime we get to share our insights, share our thoughts, I just hope it's valuable. I hope there was a nugget that somebody may have been able to pull from this conversation. And if it can serve you well, if it can add value to your life, then I think we had some time well spent today. And I just again thank you for the platform, and it's been great to be on your show.
Thank you.